Pretty nice to be here with you on a sunny day, finally. Feeling the sun, feeling spring, and also seeing a very managed and natural amount of water coming down with this runoff today. We are obviously here at Memory Grove Park because of the significance that it holds for us as desert dwellers, as Salt Lakers, and the 1983 floods, which I think in the folklore and the realities of our memories from 40 years ago, for those of us who were here, I wasn't yet here, but some of you may have been, that record snowfall and then the runoff that we received in 1983, it's natural to draw a comparison and a question mark about how does it relate to where we are today. We're here today to highlight the differences between the 1983 and 2023 today in terms of our infrastructure, our processes, and our planning to make sure that we can mitigate any flooding risks in a way that is dramatically different from 1983. But that said, these kind of distinctions that we'll be making and the comparisons can't really mitigate every risk that is here for flooding. There's simply no way to predict really what the temperatures will be and what kind of additional weather may still be in store for us in this epic year. But we are absolutely, undoubtedly, much better prepared today for the record snowfall that we've received than we were in 1983. Some of the key infrastructure improvements that came after that flood are obvious, and we're going to point them out to you here in Memory Grove Park in just a little bit. One of those is that Salt Lake County, after the 83 flood, installed 2 huge debris basins to catch sticks and branches and other debris that come down in the runoff. This is important because in 1983, the spring runoff that happened met a storm drain that was supposed to carry City Creek down through the downtown, down North Temple, and it actually became clogged with debris that extended for 4 city blocks. 4 blocks of debris, and that massive backup is part of what caused the water to ultimately run down State Street. So the city worked diligently to improve our operational capabilities and our capacity in our piped drainage system as well to allow better conveyance of these spring runoffs and storm events. Salt Lake City worked then with the county, with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, with Metropolitan Water District, and we built a new reservoir. This is when Little Dell happened in the early 90s. And it was built for 2 important purposes. One, as a flood control system, and secondly, as a water storage facility. So that reservoir right now is capturing a portion of the runoff from Parley's Creek upstream of our city system here. And currently our Department of Public Utilities is using some very controlled and deliberate measures to let the water release at a acceptable rate and make room at the same time for the new runoff that's coming down Parley's Creek system. The second major difference is that we are coming out of, hopefully, an extreme drought that you know about. This was not the case 40 years ago, when Utah Lake and the Great Salt Lake at that time were at historically high levels. Today, both lakes have probably a tragic amount of capacity at the Great Salt Lake that can collect the runoff, and that means less overall pressure on our upstream portions of the system. A third difference is that we have a hard-won knowledge. One of the great things that Mayor Ted Wilson's administration did after 83 was to ensure that the learning that we gained from that flood all those decades ago was carried forward in perpetuity. And because of that work operationally, we understand very well what happens during spring big runoff seasons, and we've been able to prepare our system and our processes to be ready. Even with these major improvements, though, I know that we have a lot of residents who are concerned and they're eager to prepare themselves. And I think actually that's what we should be doing. The steps that residents should take will depend on their property, where it's located, and ultimately what is going to make our residents feel most comfortable in mitigating the risks as the runoff season gets underway. But it's important for our residents to do their research to make sure that they spend their time and energy with the right kinds of preparation. Residents anywhere in the county can visit the website that the county runs for great information about flood zone maps, the most effective flood preparedness strategies, and current updates about runoff conditions. Our public utilities team here in Salt Lake City is also available to answer questions via the phone or email. One universal piece of advice that we can give to you, though, is to adopt your local storm drain. Cleaning those storm drains, those storm grates on your block goes a long way. It takes 2 minutes with a rake or with some gardening gloves, and making sure it's clean and clear will help us to be able to handle that runoff that may come down in a storm, as well as melting snow right here around the city. I am grateful for our public utilities, our Salt Lake County Flood Control for their focus and their joint preparations on this. Our public utilities team does so much more than our residents realize to keep our people safe, from our crystal clear drinking water to treating our sewage, to their planning efforts and watching and modeling our runoff. They're really a tremendous team, and I'm grateful for their leadership. With that, I will turn it over to our Public Utilities Director, Laura Briefer, and following Laura, you will hear from Division Chief Bud Bowden, who's over our emergency management for the city.
Thank you, Mayor, so much. We really appreciate your support on all of this, and I want to recognize members of our public utilities team who are here with us today, although a lot of them that are, out in the field or not, but we have our Deputy Director, Jesse Stewart, who every single day, more than once a day, is checking stream flows and reservoir levels. We have Mike Guyman, our stormwater engineer, who knows our system inside and out, and is definitely a great asset during this planning and during the process. And Jeff Grimsdale, our operations and maintenance supervisor, he has a huge team of more than 200 people who are responsible for making sure our water, sewer, and storm drain facilities are maintained every single day. So I just want to express my gratitude to them for all of their hard work, as well as Salt Lake County and Salt Lake City. When it comes to flood control, work hand in hand. We have some jurisdiction and operational obligations where we definitely need to work together on this. To start, I'm going to briefly summarize some current relevant conditions. I won't spend too much time on this because I know a lot has already been reported on this and is continuously being updated. But as you know, we do have a very large snowpack, and currently the Provo River, Utah Lake, and Jordan River watershed, which is the watershed that we're a part of, that snowpack water equivalent sits at 229% of normal, which as a water manager I'm really happy about. As you also know, the degree of flood risk from this year's runoff is dependent on how our spring warm-up and precipitation evolves, so we are constantly watching that. Really great news, this is a beautiful day. The temperature is perfect. The forecast for the next week is perfect for a measured runoff, a runoff that hopefully we see go down in steps. There is a lot of capacity, as the mayor said, in the system upstream and downstream of us in Utah Lake and Great Salt Lake, which is a very big difference from the 1983 and 1984 runoff years. And while we're concerned about flood risk from this year's record-breaking snowpack, we're also really grateful for the positive impacts of this snowpack. First of all, lessening our drought designation, and two, providing much needed water to Great Salt Lake. Great Salt Lake has risen about 3 feet just from precipitation alone, and we expect this year, after runoff, the lake to raise hopefully another few more feet. This will be even more beneficial if our community continues to double down on conservation, in essence making good in a time of plenty for Great Salt Lake. I'd like to give an update on some specific runoff planning and flood preparation efforts that we are taking. First, daily system and monitoring. The importance of that can't be overstated. We assess weather and hydrologic conditions on a daily basis to inform our preparedness strategies. This includes a lot of data from many different expert agencies, such as the National Weather Service. We also do field inspections. The mayor mentioned water management, in particular Little Dell Reservoir. We are currently releasing water from Little Dell Reservoir to make space available to hold the Parleys Creek runoff high up in the system, upstream from Salt Lake City. That will take a lot of pressure off of the system when peak runoff occurs. We've identified pinch points in the storm drain system. So we've been able to model our storm drain system and identify areas where flows may be constrained, where we need to take extra management precautions. And that's in particular along the infrastructure on 1300 South and North Temple. Those two large storm drain system infrastructure pieces are critical collectors of City Creek, Red Butte Creek, Emigration Creek, and Parley's Creek. And again, we'll show you some of that infrastructure after this press conference, in particular with respect to the debris basins in City Creek. We've been working on resource acquisition in the event flooding occurs. For example, Salt Lake City Public Utilities has amassed over 10,000 filled sandbags to immediately deploy in areas where it's needed in emergency situations if they occur. We're also working to make sure we have human capacity to do the things that we need to do, like monitor stream conditions each night in the event that that is needed. Heightened public engagement is also critical for us. I'd like to thank Chloe and her team for all of the public engagement work that she's doing. Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County are working together to provide timely and accurate information, receive feedback from our community, and we've received a lot of feedback that we've acted on, and provide resources where they are needed. We've formed a joint information center with Salt Lake County to make sure accurate information is available to the public. One result of the creation of this joint information center is a new website that's hosted by Salt Lake County at slco.to/floodprep. This is regularly updated with the most recent information from weather forecasts to sandbagging locations and so much more. And finally, we're working closely with Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County emergency managers. This provides a much needed systematic approach to planning, deployment of resources if emergencies arise, and public communications. And with this last point, I think it's appropriate for me to turn this time over to my friend and colleague, Division Chief Richard Bowden, who is our emergency manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to take a minute. Most of the things that you've heard already today there's a lot of good news there. Really, as the emergency manager and being before you today is really to discuss what you as residents can do to prepare. Really what we would like you to do is make sure you're going to that floodplain maps that you can find on the county website, bereadyslc.com as well, public utilities websites, etc. If you go to those, there is some concern that if you're in the floodplain that you need to go out and get a lot of sandbags, and that's really not the case. Those are areas that have had traditionally a little bit of water in them, they've had greater groundwater, and you've had flooding basements, which is really what we're seeing right now anyways. And those sandbags really are not the thing for that. Sandbags in your sandbag locations, those are really around your window wells for water that's on the surface that's running. We don't need to create a moat around your homes or anything else at this point. This is really the preparation that's gone in and gone forward, and the planning that's taken place really we're in a good position right now, and we'll continue to be that. Our Emergency Coordination Center, which is the organization I oversee as well as the JIC, they're monitoring and working and planning with our public utilities and other outside partners, including volunteer organizations, National Weather Service, and NOAA. Again, probably the things that you can do best right now is cleaning out your storm drains around your homes, the curb and gutter, keeping your rain gutters clear, and then making sure that the water as it comes out of your downspouts is away from the home. Right now, the majority of our water is really in the ground in the valley at this point. So really, as we get to the rain season, with the spring and then going into the monsoon season, we want to make sure that we're keeping that water away from your foundations. Again, really one of the things that we've done in the fire department is our Swift Water team has been out as well, monitoring the creeks, the streams, and mapping those out, making sure we have good locations to get in. I would like to remind everybody, as I'm sure you've been hearing, that we want to keep ourselves, our pets, and our families away from those fast-moving streams. That's one of the best things you can do to be prepared and to keep your family safe. Really, I have nothing else at this time other than, Madam Mayor.
Sweet. I think we're all happy to take any questions you might have for a moment.
Can you identify specific areas of concern that are vulnerable to flooding?
Do you want to take that, Laura? Laura?
At this time, the areas that have the highest risk of flooding from runoff, a runoff perspective, would be areas that are within the floodplain around the Jordan River, and also around the different creeks as they flow through the city. At this point, those are the areas that would be the highest concern. That's not to say that they will flood. It's important to take extra precautions around those areas and pay attention to the forecasts and flood projections. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I think we're able to, do you want to talk about what's next if we're going to show some of the infrastructure?
Sure.
And if there's one-on-one questions, we can do that.
Chloe, do you have details on?
So we're going to sort of do like a caravan up to the debris basins and city creeks. You guys can get an idea of what we're talking about and talk about putting it on the infrastructure. So we're going to be following our executive director. So we'll wait till everybody's ready to go and then
So we'll be actually going down over through up to the avenue.
So in case people couldn't hear that, you're going to follow Jesse Stewart here down the canyon to go up towards Bonneville Drive, which is a one-way street, so you'll want to go that direction. And we'll show